So can you hear me? Yes. So good afternoon, colleagues, and happy Eid or Ramazan Bayram, as we collectively call it in the Balkans, to our colleagues who are celebrating today. I'm very happy to host this seminar on Foresight and Futures Literacy with our guest, Professor Marina Andeva. I know we talked last week a little on anticipatory governance and foresight, so I believe this session today will illuminate further aspects of it. First, let me introduce our guest. Marina Andeva is a full professor of political science at University American College Skopje, recognized for her interdisciplinary expertise in the intersection of strategic foresight, European governance, migration policy, and ethics in innovation. With a strong academic and policy-oriented profile, she combines scholarship, institutional leadership, and international project engagement to advance anticipatory governance and responsible public policy in North Macedonia and across Europe. Her academic work focuses on strategic foresight and future literacy as tools for strengthening democratic resilience, policy innovation, and long-term institutional capacity. She is the author of a textbook on strategic foresight and regularly designs and delivers foresight trainings, workshops, and scenario-based exercises for students, public officials, and international stakeholders. Through her teaching portfolio covering courses such as Foresight, EU institutions, international organizations, migration and refugees, and minority rights, she integrates interactive and participatory methodologies that encourage critical thinking and future-oriented analysis. Professor Andeva is deeply involved in EU-funded research and innovation projects under Horizon Europe and Coast Actions, frequently serving as work package leader, external ethics advisor, or foresight expert. Her work also addresses AI governance, data protection, fundamental rights, and societal acceptance of emergent technologies, ensuring compliance with European ethical standards while fostering innovation. She has contributed to major initiatives, including projects focused on AI-driven border management, risk-based passenger screening, and cultural heritage technologies. Beyond academia, she actively engages in policy dialogue and capacity building at national and regional level, promoting European integration, institutional reform, and anticipatory policymaking in North Macedonia. Through her leadership and professional and diplomatic network, she advocates for embedding foresight, ethics, and futures thinking into education, governance, and international cooperation. So, dear Marina, thank you for coming. Thank you for being with us. And the floor, or in this case, the screen, is all yours.
Vanja, thank you very much for the invitation. Also to Sanya and to Tina, I'm very glad that I'm here with you today, and then we can talk about this topic that I have dear in my heart. Let me just start by, apart from all the things that Vanja said about me, let me just start about the story, how I end up now this, let's say, last couple of years, thinking about foresight and future literacy. It was, I think, 2016 or 17 when I started also working, because I will be 10 years now at the university. I started also working at the university, and I think you already know Zoran Nechav from the Institute of Societal Civilis, yes, and he had a project on training, capacity training for foresight, strategic foresight, and he invited Regina Joseph, which is a futurist from US. And actually, at that time, I was really hooked up on this. I was researching on many other different fields. I mean, my PhD is about minority rights. My MA is about migration. So I ended up, after the PhD, you do the things that the PhD, try to extract as many as possible from the PhD field and PhD text. But this was very interesting for me, and it motivated me, actually, talking also with Regina, motivated me to embed this foresight, strategic foresight, as a curricula at our university. So starting, I think, from 2019, 18, 19 already, I have tried and I have succeeded in one of the accreditation programs at the School of Political Science to introduce a master course, a PhD, a workshop. It was a 4-credit at that time, strategic foresight workshop for the students following international relations and diplomacy, just to start with something. So it was a sort of a workshop. And I'm glad that I started that, because now it ended up being an elective course on undergraduate level as well, both for political science students and for psychology students, because within the School of Political Science, we have also psychology department. And because the topic is very horizontal, the topic is very multidisciplinary, and my aim is also to push forward to the other faculties, but let's take it slowly in a way, because people might find it very pushy. But this is how I actually was driven by it, and by stories of Regina, and by the capacity building that we made in Bar and in Belgrade at that time with Zoran, and with the project, and with other colleagues as well. Then I met Vanja. I know Vanja from a long time ago, but I met Vanja with UNHCR capacity building training with Demos Helsinki, think tank, a think tank organization from Finland. And they did this also training for trainers and seminars on foresight, anticipatory governance, basically. And I went through that, and then I ended up in my maternity leave writing about textbooks. So this is how I used my maternity leave, and the textbook came into light in the beginning of last week. So let me just start. This is my into the topic, let's say, because there are a lot of things that we could talk about today, and I hope we will be managing to talk about in the time frame that we have, because this is a very vast and broad topic. But we arranged with Vanya that we will be very focused, strict, and time management will be our first priority. So let me start with just a simple observation that most policies, strategies that we do, even personal decisions that we make, are the ones that, if the future is predictable, we always question ourselves whether we can predict the future or not. And the answer is immediately no, because we cannot know what will happen in the future. Sometimes, even in our weekly planning calendars, etc., some disruption may happen, and modification of our time will be evident in the way. And globally speaking, regionally speaking, but even nationally speaking, we live in a time where uncertainty is not the exception, but it is the environment that we live in. This is why last year the World Futures Day of UNESCO was the future in a time of volatility, in time of modifications of the world, in time of uncertainty. So the question is, when we discuss about the strategies, we discuss about policies, we discuss creation, about different kind of policies, we also question ourselves how we can make decisions based on a fundamentally uncertain future. Definitely, because it's very very challenging, very very difficult, and most of the governments and states in the world have already figured out that that's very difficult. This is why they are ending up in being more anticipatory than before. So before I just start, distinguishing maybe the terms between foresight and future literacy and some practices that are in the world, I would like to invite you for imaginatory exercise. So you have the Menti code and the QR code, but also the number. And I would like to invite you to imagine that today is, I don't know, 20 of March 2035. And there are no newspapers in handwriting, but it's online media only. I don't know, maybe at that time something will change. So imagine one newspaper headline about what is happening in the world, in your society, nationally, locally, about technology, about governance in your area where you live. Maybe you will imagine living in a different world as well, or maybe in a different country as well. So let's give ourselves time to think about that and imagine 2035. I hope you don't have problems with accessing the Menti. We have Yugo nostalgia coming up. One can question itself, why do we need EU when we have Yugoslavia? But that's a different question for a different time. Boran, nice seeing you. We haven't seen each other for so long.
You will probably guess my response too.
I don't know, maybe you've changed in meantime. Who knows? Okay. Yes. Ongoing conflict in Turkey from refugee flows. Okay. Drafts puts pressure on AI employment. Wow. Goes to the government party ruled. Let's wait for the others. Okay. Wow. Interesting. Oh, France is gone. Okay. Yeah, then we need loans. Okay. Someone is very musical today, but it's Friday, so I guess it's understandable. Europeans now spend more time in conversation than in front of screens for. Oh, this reminds me of psychology students at our university, definitely. Okay. I mean, I leave to people to respond. I guess the typing takes a lot of time, but this exercise, what I just did, I did a couple of times with. And the last time I did was the workshop with civil servants, and we talked about migration policy and how you see Macedonia in 2035 in terms of migration. And honestly, all the answers that I gave were very pessimistic, were very frightening. They were all talking about security, instability, pressure, crisis. But I guess your answers here also a little bit, they're divided from from, let's say, musical to really things that pressure even today's society and challenge that. But when you move towards this like sort of a brainstorm exercise and an energizer at the beginning, which I think all of those that work with participatory processes, participatory events and workshops on foresight and future thinking. After that, when you continue explaining what it is and you go towards the scenario development, they all figure out, but we didn't realize that we actually are allowed to imagine our better future, that we could imagine better future, because every time we talk about the future, we always think from a current point of view, that how we are today, that we are stressed, that we are challenged with so many different things going on. And imagining the future is actually our state of mind is a precondition for imagining the future, but it doesn't necessarily have to be like that. Of course, it's this is my optimistic view right now. I'm not usually an optimist, but having to consider a wide horizon of thinking, it's a good thing. And this is why, for me, this is a key moment, actually, because it shows that it is the barrier is not knowledge, but barrier is actually an imagination. So when I do talk with students and with other peers of mine, yes, knowledge is very important in order to figure out what will happen in 10, 15 years. Data is very important. So we have to consider that, what is happening now and what are the predictions in economy. OECD does a lot about this, the strategic foresight unit in the OECD. But it's also the imagination and how we want to see ourselves and, of course, our children, our relatives, and our peers into the future, in the imagination. And this is why foresight and future literacy here are very linked. Why it matters today, why foresight matters, especially for society, not that much as an individual, because we live in a lot of age of disruptions, a lot of things coming up at the same time. I mean, you can see in the slide a lot of connected dots in terms of clusters, from pollution, from weather, extreme weather events, from terrorist attacks, from Trump and sudden wars, from everything that is going on. And it is hard for us, in this climate pressure, migration dynamics, geopolitical instabilities that happen, not in the closest region, but also abroad, technological disruption. A lot of the times when we talked about the future, it was in the last couple of 3 years, was AI, how AI will replace us, what AI will do to us in many different fields. And these clusters, they're not isolated clusters, they're all interconnected. And this is why there is the key challenge. Uncertainty is not temporary, it is structural and it is constant. And because it is constant, we need to find a tool, an instrument, something that could gather all these clusters and uncertainties and help us to create something that is plausible, something that is preferable for us, definitely. One of the things that before starting, let's say, I just want to emphasize this, and maybe you have already read about many psychology studies. I have recently, last year, I wrote an article linking anticipatory governance with societal acceptance of whether we think about short-term, mid-term, or long-term. A lot of the individuals, there are also regions and societies in the world where in their culture, it is embedded the fact that we live day by day. This is also a way of cultural mentality, psychological dimension. So not all, people actually relate to the future, but they relate mostly to the past and to the present. And we have a lot of examples, even in our region, Western Balkan countries, that we are very much linked with what happened with the past. Sometimes we isolate the bad things that happened in the past, and we want just the good things to come back, like Yugoslavia, for example. I mean, I'm not saying that it was bad, it was good. I was really a small child at that time. But living in the past and in the present sometimes gives us a little bit of limitations. And the future literacy part, especially in connecting it with the psychology dimension and how we see time, the time perception in terms of short and long term, really help societies, and it really conditions the society on how they think. There are a lot of states, and we will talk about even later if you want, there are a lot of states in the world where they actually have embedded this anticipatory approach, foresight approach into their decision-making process, into the policy-making process. We have many different examples and different structures depending on the country, depending on the state, from Singapore to Finland to Netherlands to Spain recently in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has Strategic Foresight Unit, to Canada, to Brazil. There are a lot of countries that they already do that, not because their society might be prone to, or maybe they are ready to think about the future, but I think that because of this aspect of managing the policies of a long run and be not reactive but proactive and anticipatory and resilient. And you will see later if you want to research on it, or you have already researched on this, that foresight and future literacy is also linked with resilience. A lot of activities and workshops, events that are made throughout the world, and especially Africa now is focus of UNESCO. They do a lot of laboratories about the future of Africa and future of regions in Africa, is about being resilient, being ready for change, being ready for to respond to a change and to be ready for it. Unfortunately, what I have seen, maybe you have a different opinion, in our region, in our part of the world, we always look at, yes, we will deal with it when it comes. But dealing with when it comes is really something that doesn't produce any development whatsoever, and it doesn't produce any added value whatsoever. And it then might end up in casualties, might end up in more risks to be accumulated than before. Of course, we have this risk mitigations, KPIs, a lot of measures that are going on, and you have to see and foresee what a certain event could do and what an impact could be. But if you think about it, to be ready for it, no matter what, it's a different thing. It's a different aspect that can be considered. So I just want to point out some definitions that are in different organizations that deal with future studies, future thinking, future literacy. For example, OECD, as you can see in the screen, defines future as improving the quality and resilience of policies through anticipatory governance. So OECD, because it's an organization for development, economic and development, they look at it from a point of view really from anticipatory governance approach, from state approach, and how these policies, when we create them, when there is a creation of the policy making process, we look forward for trends, signals that are in the society. We are screening them. What will happen if this happens? We are making multiple scenarios, and this is what OECD does in their work, and helping, of course, the countries outside the membership of the OECD to look forward to that quality of policies and resilience. UNESCO is building human capacity through education. UNESCO is an education and culture organization, and the use of the future in the educational process. And I will explain later on what is the focus there. EU has every year strategic foresight reports. The last one was a couple of months from 2025, supporting strategic coordination of policies and competitiveness within the EU. But reading the strategic foresight reports of the EU, you will figure out what is actually the focus of EU, because they are the ones that are a result of a European Commission long-time planning, let's say, for those years of the mandate. And you could also see an insight not only within the European Union, but for example, for countries as my origin country, Vanja and Borjan and others here present, that it is something that you can see where where the EU is focusing on, and where does your country of origin or citizens is stand up in this, and where is the path? Even if you want to take that path, what are the preconditions and what are the key focuses and issues you should focus on? UN, strengthening long-term global governance and multilateral actions. A lot of agencies, affiliated entities and organizations within EU, such as UNHCR, International Organization of Migration, UNDP is a program, as a development program, funding program. They're also really much focused on foresight as a tool to help governments and states in different fields. Now, foresight. For OECD, foresight is a systematic process embedded in policy making. I said it already, they focus on policy making in order to explore possible futures and to inform decision making on the basis of the possible future. So we already know that there are conditions of uncertainty. We already know that there are uncertainties. So let's think about possible futures linked with these uncertainties and prepare for that, and prepare different scenarios for different policies and reactions to different policies. UNESCO rarely uses the term foresight. I mean, it acknowledges that it exists, but it prefers the concept of futures literacy, to educate, to have a capacity building on the future thinking aspect. So future thinking as a term and future literacy as a term for UNESCO are the key words. Foresight is just a technical exercise, and one of the methods that I will speak today is just the technical exercises that the future laboratories of UNESCO is using in order to boost up and have a capacity building. EU is looking at as a policy tool used to align priorities among institutions and member states, such as the reports. And for UN, it's an analytical and planning capacity. They also there is the Summit for the Future, there is UN Futures Lab as well for transformations. When we look at the different, let's say, if we want to cluster the different governance models that there exist, or states that embed anticipatory governance in their everyday policy making, we could think of one that are anticipatory, of course, that they are preparing for multiple futures. We can think about countries that are preventive, that they manage risks on the basis of a risk analysis and mitigation measures. And we can think about reactive governance or reactive states that respond to crisis. It's not that these are very black and white. I mean, you know that in research, in theory, and what is in practice is not always that black and white. They are infused in this sense. So anticipatory government can be both and have to be reactive and preventive at the same time. A reactive governance and government have to be preventive at the same time. But in order to embed all these three elements, it needs to work towards the anticipatory governance approach. So different countries, such as, the ones that I mentioned before, have different systems, different organizations within their government. Some they have on a presidential level. So within the presidential office, they have a specific unit for foresight. Some they have on a ministerial level in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Some they have within the parliament, such as Finland, when there is a committee directly linked with future. So they produce foresight reports every year in the parliament. They present them and then discuss about this every year. So it's not like we do scenarios and we think about 2035 and we say, that's it. From a 2026 point of view, we do scenarios 2035 and we are done. But things change. Uncertainty there is. So we always have to question whether some variable has been changed, whether some signal is new in the horizon. We always have to scan that. And it is a process, it's a work. So this is why these governments have figured out that there should be a single unit that does this. Or like Canada, they mostly do in capacity building. They have a specific fund. And on this fund they available money, resources, financial instruments that different stakeholders can use in order to boost this this approach of anticipatory governance. What is and what is not strategic foresight? When we think about what is not prediction. So I don't know in the other languages, ex-Yugoslav languages, but in Macedonian, I have always found it difficult, and Vanja knows when we were in the UNHCR seminar, to translate foresight. And there was a translation, predviduvanja, which is forecast, but that is so wrong. And talking last year with my dean, which is comparative literature PhD person, he told me, why you don't use prozirljivost. I hope you understand what this means, but why prozirljivost, I say to him, because yes, it's no prediction. You say it's not prediction. I understand foresight is not a prediction, but prozirljivost is like looking through the window, and you don't look, with a straight direction towards the window. You look the horizon, what you can see from the window, right? So windows can be small, can be big, depending on the window, but you just look at it, have this more broad, let's say, environment in front of you. So you just prozirljivost. Yes. So
I will write it down.
I find it difficult with some of the public servants that I worked with. I find it was found difficult by them to look at prozirljivost as a word. So I then repeated foresight, which is something that is acceptable more than 20 years out in the world, but it's something different. So yes, prozirljivost. Vanja, thank you for writing it in the chat. So when looking at what is foresight, it is the future coin. The first thing that comes up in my mind is the future cone. So you see the future cone now. You see how the cone works. You see that you have impossible, something, impossible won't happen, something that you predict in 2035, but you're really science fiction, character. Even most science fiction movies are now true today, present, but it's something that won't ever happen, something that is possible, and it might happen on the basis of a knowledge that you have, something that is plausible or could happen. It's from the current knowledge, and projected future, something that you have a baseline. And usually the countries do that. They have a baseline. They have this strategic documents that they produce every 2, every 4, every 5 years, depending on the country, and that they have this, very constant future that they think of their country or organization, because it's not just countries, organizations are using foresight, strategic foresights as well. Something that is probable and likely to happen, current trends, but something that is probable is something that is even a midterm and a short term. For example, when we worked for the migration policy, I could not say that this is a true strategic foresight, because foresight usually, and especially some of the methods that are used within foresight, such as scenario planning, are best made for a period of more than 10 years. But strategic documents are always 2-4 years, and it is something that is really probably to happen with minor disruptions in the society, but you could be ready for that. So this is the probable one. The one thing that the literacy part, knowledge-based part or training part does is imagine ourselves of a preferable future. So something that we want to happen and should happen for some cause. We have a goal, even personally, we have a certain goal that we want to achieve, and we want to go towards that. And why it's strategic? Because there are strategies and actions that you have to make in order to get to that goal and point. So there are many foresight methods. I just linked this couple of methods that you probably maybe have heard of. Horizon scanning, this is the first step. When you do some planning, you scan the horizon, scan what is going on by some drivers of change. They are Pastel, they are this step, many acronyms that are used, but basically they are for demographic factors, drivers, economic, environmental, societal and cultural, technological and political. So these are the ones, political and legal. So these are the ones that we usually do take into account. These are macro, let's say, drivers of change that are the clustered in terms of this macro sectors, macro field, when we look at the horizon scanning. When we look at the horizon scanning, the most important part is, I mean, some will say, well, how you don't predict, okay, Marina, you say you don't predict, but how you want to, how you imagine and how you want to define a certain future if you don't have data? Yes, we need to have data. So horizon scanning and the drivers of change are actually the very important first steps in this foresight, strategic foresight and planning, in order to figure out what are the data are telling you, like OECD does. They are based on data, on statistics, on something, on policies that are ongoing, on outcomes and results of the policies that they are, on how, on perceptions of citizens when we look at the societal and cultural factors, on the technological development, what is going on at the moment, what are the signals, the weak signals that are happening in the background that we could figure out in terms of what will happen in the future. So we need all these things in order to, at that certain, and a certain point, to make scenarios. So why scenarios are important? I mean, they are important for many different reasons. Some people say that they are just stories. And for students of undergraduate, I just translate them into stories because they don't have that much knowledge behind them. You know, it's different with PhD and master student, but with undergraduate student, especially I had last year in the semester, second year students for administrative law and policy making. So yes, they have a certain background, but they don't have still the data, so they need the data. So what I encourage them, you know, just energize their brain into think about stories, and 4 different stories. Some they do 3 scenarios, some they do 2 scenarios, which are black and white usually scenarios because there are 2. But there is a so-called 2x2 matrix that I found very dear because it's really logical. It has 2 uncertainties, and you can see in the background here there are many different uncertainties and matrices that you can do. For example, one uncertainty is a benefit of a thing, and another uncertainty is the cost, whether it is a high or a low cost, whether it is a high benefit or a low benefit. And on the basis of that, you make 4 scenarios, or effectiveness and feasibility, or certainty and uncertainty, and high impact and low impact, benefit and risk at the same time. So you see, I'm not reading them all, but you see all the uncertainties. And pop up, if you identify the uncertainties, you immediately will have the 4 scenarios, which is certainly a matching. This is why you see plus, minus, minus, plus. For example, with the effectiveness and feasibility, you have scenarios. The first one is high effectiveness, but low feasibility of a thing. So you need to have a topic, of course. This is just the general method that is used. And I found very acceptable this approach from many groups that I've worked with, and they found it very easy to understand. But the hardest part is to define the uncertainties, and this is this is the hardest part. And Vanja is confirming it, but it's really the hardest part because on the basis of how you will do horizon scanning, on the basis of how you will define the drivers of change and the general topic that you will identify, there's uncertainties don't come just like that. So you need really to think about it, because once you define them, then the scenarios are there. You are going through the path. So any kind of change of the uncertainties will give you a step backwards, and you need to do it all over again. And the final, which it is very used in policymaking, and I think you already know action plans that are did on a strategic planning level, it's the backcasting. So you have a 2035, you want Yugoslavia to be one, the first thing that you end up there, and to be in the EU. But if you wanted to do that, then there are certain steps from 2026 to 2035 in order to come true, conditions to come true in order for Yugoslavia to be a whole again in 2035, and we all enter the one that are left from Yugoslavia, to enter in the EU. So backcasting is a mind exercise, and it's sometimes very hard to understand. And I found at least when I exercise this with the students, I found some groups that couldn't imagine themselves in 2035 and going backward of what will happen. Some they started from 2026, 2027 and made the changes, but this is, if you look at it, if you exercise that, it gives different results. Thinking from today and thinking from 2035, it really gives a different outcomes and different results. I think my time is, yeah, I talk too much. So what is the real policy application? I mentioned the strategic foresight reports. I've mentioned the states and anticipatory governance models and organizations. For example, UNESCO, what UNESCO actually does is making sure that there is a collaborative and cooperation environment to organize education events, workshops, and literally to work on education about the future and future thinking. So the future thinking is the aspect. So they have a lot of, if you are interested in, they have a lot of chairs. These are called UNESCO chairs that are in different angles of the future of foresight all over the world. Approximately 25 are actual now until this day. And 6 of them are in France, 2 in Brazil. In Africa, there are also a lot. There's a lot working on, and they do work on this in the last 15 years. So it's not something that is quite from a long time ago, but they do work on that and facilitate, let's say, this discussion and organize seminars. The main milestone event is the 2nd of December each year, when they on different aspects, they talk about the future. This year, last year, sorry, was AI most of the time. I was there, and all the workshops and even the plenary sessions were about AI, and how the AI will be, I don't know, invading us in a way. I found some of the talks a little bit disturbing, but every year they have this these talks. There is also the Millennium Project. It is more wider than UNESCO. It is something that I could send you the links also later on chat. They also talk about every month on Friday they have talks about the future. So it's open to everybody. It's not something that you need to pay. And it's a seminar that all futurists, like they call each other, talk about the future's development, but not only from a practical point of view, also from a theoretical point of view, you know, from research, what they did, different theories, different concepts, different methods that are used. There is the Institute for the Future in the US. I think some of you have already had a chance to maybe have events in them. They organize courses in Coursera about future and different kind of methods as well. All over the world, there are organizations and even consultancy organizations, think tanks, small firms, consultancy firms that they work on these issues. How it started, the foresight, especially the strategic aspect, foresight is started with the companies, with the business sector. So Royal Dutch Shell made the first scenarios. This is how it started. And then in the organizational sense, in the business world, I'm not an economist, I'm not a business scholar, but there it is embedded from a long time ago, because you do business plannings for the for the profit for the firms, etc. And then at a later stage, it became translated to a tool that could be used for the states and for policy making. So this is the website of UNESCO. This is something that Vanja said that I said to the textbook during my maternity leave, I wanted to have a material for my studies, for my courses at the university. So I compiled a lot of resources in one textbook. It is also online available. If anyone is interested, either me or Vanja can share it. Vanja has a copy as well. And there are many different examples that and many different methods and games that can be played with people, with students, with different target groups, in order to to work on this shift of let's say mentality and how do we think. But one thing that I will really promote and for reading material is this Transforming the Future Anticipation in the 21st Century. It's a book online available. I can now even share you the link on chat. You can download it easily, and it is a book, a compilation of different contribution, but the main author and editor is Riel Miller. He was until recently a director of the Future Literacy Department at UNESCO. And he works a lot, especially now in Africa region. He's based in France, in Paris. He works as a professor in one business school in Paris, but he works on this mini laboratories of future. So what we can do, and maybe here we could open up the floor. Vanja, what do you think for any kind of discussions and many kind of questions? What I thought that we could do in order to assist and push forward this future literacy and future-driven society, especially among young people, is to make different kind of events. So what I did in the couple of 3 years, I organized workshop for my students, but not only political science students, also psychology students, business administration students. I did a workshop on management of human resources, where you see the future employees. For the psychology students, we linked it with the week of Days of Psychology in December and the World Futures Day of UNESCO. So we did also with them a workshop. I did a workshop in Iași University in Romania for PhD students in economics. And this is where I truly saw that you need data. I mean, I know that I need data, but they asked for data when they actually did the exercise. But when you do these workshops, you do it either 2-3 days, or you do it just 2-3 hours in order to introduce someone to this method, as Vanja already knows. I am in a CEPUS network, a coordinator, one of the coordinators from Macedonia in border and regional studies. So we also do within this CEPUS network online workshops, and I will be in Bratislava next month to do also online, to do on-site workshop for them as well. I'm trying to bridge now because I made a little bit of screening and investigation, and I saw that in the last 10 years, there were no formal networks, at least finance formal networks on an EU and wider based, especially financed by the cost action. So I've linked with colleagues from all over the world with the help of a dear colleague of mine in Laura University in Finland. And we submitted a cost application last October. So I hope in a couple of days we'll have the results and be positive. We'll see. But it's about future literacy laboratories and linking people that are already here into this future-driven thinking and events and exchanging of ideas. So I do hope when it will if it will be financed, I will get in touch with you, whoever is interested to participate in different events that we are planning. Meanwhile, we want a horizon with another university, with Iași University, on Own Europe, Own EU. So Borjan, you might know Andrea Stojkovski. So we did with Andrea this, and from September, we are going to work on this Horizon project. We are responsible, Prespa Institute will be responsible for delivering these workshops and also surveys and questionnaires distributed, especially in this our region, neighborhood region, about different scenarios of the EU enlargement and the future of EU, and until recently we also applied for Erasmus CA 221 or something like that, one of these CAS financial instrument about embedding foresight in university curricula. Okay, apart from what I did as a pilot, and so far I could say that it's successful, but the idea is that to have these learning outcomes, learning objectives more focused on this issues within a university level. So I think I will catch my breath. And Vanya, if you have anything or others that they want to ask.
Yeah, I just wanted to fill in some of the colleagues that as part of the work with our government, we already, I mean, there was already as part of the National Development Strategy, there was also some workshops with the working group on integration, and there were these measures that were developed. Also, as we said, the methodology of foresight, it does offer a lot of open interpretation. And one of the part that is a little bit tricky when doing policies is the long-term foresight. So there is also, we saw the horizon in, I think it was 15 years, Marina, correct me if I'm wrong, or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And then when working backwards, we only kept the measures that were for the relevant time period of 5 years. That is exactly what we kind of decided to do with my research that I'm doing as part of this fellowship, to have a 2035 horizon and then work backwards and just use the data that is relevant for the migration group. Whereas your work with the Intergovernmental Body for Migration, the migration group, was focused only on the next 5 years as of the resolution. So these are, as we said, because there are, again, if you read a little bit more of the literature, nothing is written in stone, and you can work the
Yes.
trainings and the workshops. You can make them, you can custom make them. And as Marina said, it's very, very important to be prepared for every workshop that you are planning to do.
I mean, what I can say, sorry to interrupt, Vanya, but your outcomes, because you did interviews and workshops with young people, with students, and you sent the preliminary analysis answers, results to us, those working on the migration policy. And my colleague, the Professor Virica Janeska from Economic Institute, now in pension, she's working on the most part, the narrative part of migration policy. She immediately commented and said, you see to IOM, to the International Organization of Migration, you see that even young people think and confirm what my data is telling, which is another proof and another instrument that you can use in order to tailor policies for a certain outcome that you want to achieve. So apart from data, from statistics, from research, these are also some of the key instruments that it can be used, and I think they're found very, very useful in a way. Yes.
No, and it really does complement complement we're creating policies and governing. So this is what I wanted for the colleagues to just to sometimes there is a dogmatic, let's say, approach to some of the methodologies that we work with. And what we've learned in our, especially from the trainings that we had, is that sometimes you do have to come prepared, but also there is a space for, as I said, for custom making them to fit the time that you have, the resources that you have, and of course the audience participation. Okay.
Yes.
Now I can open the floor if you're, I think the both of us, we can talk for hours as we usually do, but we can open the floor now for any of the colleagues if they have some questions to ask. Dorian?
Thank you, Marina, for the inspiring presentation. I have, I would say, two questions. The first one is there, although this is still very relatively recent and novel method, but is there some scientific evidence about the accuracy of some past foresights? That would be interesting to see, and probably in the following decade do more on this, but I'm curious whether there is already some evidence.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is, you mentioned that Foresight is generally used currently by international organizations. How about businesses? Do they use Foresight to predict political or economic or societal risks, and whether that field is also explored, whether there is already a market there for Foresight?
Yeah, thank you, Bojan. In terms of the first question, scientific evidence, of course. I mean, this is something that has been researched and focused on scientifically in the US, let's say in the other part of the Atlantic. And there are many journals, but the one that is the most prestigious ones, the ones that I also gathered some information with the help of our diaspora and access to journals there, because we don't have that much access in the journals, is the Journal of Future Studies. So in the Journal of Future Studies, for many, many, many years, some of the articles are even open, depending on when they were published. So the copyright and the open access is open. But in those articles, scientific articles, people that are working on it, scholars that are working on the future studies, do critique some of the methods. For example, recently, in the last maybe 5 years, scenario planning is criticized a lot. Reasons why this is criticized: because of previous outcomes and results of previous scenarios, let's say. So they do try to analyze it from a theoretical and practical point of view. People that have made scenarios, especially intergovernmental organizations that made scenarios for region or specific countries, and then now they criticize that these scenarios didn't happen. But this is not a pessimistic point of view. In terms of it should not demotivate. It didn't demotivate me, in a sense, because I do like scenario planning, and it is a good exercise. The tricky part, as I've mentioned here, is how you cross the data and how you cross the uncertainties, and to what extent you detail your scenarios, or maybe even broader them. If you have a broader scenario, the story misses something, right? You write a story, you write a roman, a science fiction, or whatever, it misses details, and this is a broad scenario. If you go very much into also a detailed scenario, of course that some of the details might end up not realistic, because of the many uncertainties that we find ourselves today, right? Today we have so many variables that happen on a daily basis. I mean, who knew that 2 weeks ago Trump and Israel will, somebody knew, definitely. Some knew. I mean, Andrea is poking at me, and I said to him, well, eventually this would have happened. But and he will say, well, you spoke like a true futurist. I don't find myself as a true futurist, definitely. But there are some signals, and depending on how you identify the signals and how you make the interpretation of the signals, crossing with the data. It's not just my perception of the signals. Oh, I see that this signal, some turbulences in the east will do major crisis, and of course the oil will rise up the price, and other disturbance will be in the region. China will reposition, etc. Russia as well. Yeah, but it's not just my feeling. It's the data, what the data says, and the data of also historical data, but also current data, current research. So yes, there are a lot of talks about the different methods, whether they work or not. But it's always, what variables, what factors you take into account, and to what certain extent you define the term successful, a successful scenario. What is actually a successful scenario? The final outcome of all this is to be prepared, to be resilient, to be prepared for action, to not be surprised. We will always be surprised about the future, but how surprised we will be, whether it will be really high or it will be really low, and we will be ready. In terms of the business, it's actually the other way around, that Firstly, in the business sector, this was emphasized. And you have a lot of firms, consultancy firms that work for more than 20, 30 years already, or even more, because look at Royal Dutch Shell and the establishment of Royal Dutch. And since then, many other firms within their work, within their business planning, they use scenarios and they use foresight instrument. Horizon scanning, definitely. I mean, this is the first thing that they use. When they try to place something on the market, when they try to see and foresee what will happen in the market in the next 10 years. And I have colleagues from the business faculty, the business school, that when I said to them foresight, they said, no, but that's strategic planning, they said, because they have a course in strategic planning. And I said, yes, it might be something of a strategic planning, but do you use this and this tools? Because there are many other tools. I mean, I just pointed out 4 of them, but there are a lot of other tools that could be used, the future wheel, for example, or any other that can be used. So business people use certain tools that are adaptable for their environment. They don't use backcasting, for example, or they use little backcasting, whereas backcasting is mostly used in policymaking and anticipatory governance. So depending on the context, different actors, different targets, different groups use different. There are a lot of consultancy firms popping up like mushrooms in recent 5 years, Borian. You cannot imagine that the market is sometimes it's crowded in terms of firms that are using consultancy for businesses, for small and medium enterprises, even for startups. To use this kind of tools in order to see how they will grow and whether they will be successful or not, of what will happen if their product will be, in the marketplace, similar product placed in the market under different brand or on a different characteristics set, etc. My recent example, because like Vanja said, and I sent her the bio, of course, but like Vanja said, I worked in Horizon projects on border management and you use artificial intelligence. European Commission spent a lot of money in the last 5 years on this Horizon programs on security, on border security, external security of the EU border. And there was the AI Act popping up already, and we started the project. And what we do now, if we don't know, because there was a long process of the AI Act, we didn't know, firstly, when it will be adopted finally, because there was the ping pong game between the Parliament and the Council about the different, and first the Commission. You know how it works, Borja. and because we are in the middle of a research project and we have a certain mandate in the description of work and the grant agreement, but then again, the Commission finding itself in the middle as well, in the middle of new obligations, new AI Act, it says to us, but you need to adjust your project, your technology to be applicable when it will be on the market with the AI Act. But we don't know what will be the provisions of the AI Act, and the term of the years of the projects are very limited, 36, 48, depending on the project. So what we did as an exercise, that we anticipate some of the risks that might happen. We made a screening of some of the AI requirements in terms of societal and ethical requirements. And we also published a white paper on one of the projects that, in order to anticipate, and it's very good and it's very useful to anticipate some of the risk and to have a good risk matrix and a risk screening in order for it to be better prepared. So this could be used also in research project, find themselves in the middle of, let's say, turbulences. And Vangeli and Atanas, thank you for joining us, and see you. The future isn't good. Okay, can I have, sorry, I don't know how much time still we'll have, but I will have one more exercise, just a final exercise for all of you. Vanja, what do you say?
Yeah, let's crack on and just try to finish it, because I don't know how the other colleagues in Macedonia is a non-working day, so we can let Marina.
So again, you are already, I assume, on Menti, or you closed it down. If you didn't, just continue. And there is a so-called optimistic and pessimistic matrix here. And I would just ask you to place yourself on the grid, moving up towards the top or the bottom or the left or the right, whether you are optimist or pessimist, and whether you are feeling that you can make a difference or you feel that you are constrained in terms of making the difference. Okay.
Marina, I do have a question. I'm coming from philosophy and from anthropology, so it's well, it is in a way thought differently about a foresight, about a forecast, about a future, etc. And given the shift that happened within the first and then the second Trump administration, and taking into account these influences, I now think directly on those projects like Dodge, like these very much autistic but futuristic projects, or Peter Thiel, etc., about these techno-libertarians, and where they stand concerning the future, even these antichrist and cajon discourses that Thiel is developing nowadays. How do you perceive this program of foreseeing the future from the perspective of regular liberal democracies that are very much failing more or less in United States and even in Europe on many fronts? So I'm here attacking special attention on ideological frameworks that are behind the technically speaking foresight methodologies.
Okay, well, interesting. I mean, there are a lot of philosophers working in future studies, this I might say.
Yeah,
I've met a lot of them.
Right.
Yes, I met a lot of them, and I can also have an example that I didn't mention. 2 months ago, I was in a training with one of the chairs, UNESCO chairs on future literacy, and he was giving us just methodological, insightful training on the future of democracy. So what we actually did, and what he did, he based, this is a criticism of mine, it based this future of democracy thinking from a perception point of view. So we gathered like 25 people, and he asked ourselves, how do you see the future? And then we worked in groups, and we developed a little bit of stories about the democracy. But we ended up again with the need that it's one thing to how you perceive, and ideology perceives, right? How you perceive the future, and one thing how the future develops itself in practical terms. And this was my critics, that we focused mainly on the perception rather than on really applicable examples and the outcomes of. It doesn't mean that if you have a liberal democracy system that you will have positive outcomes. This is not the thing, or negative outcomes. Or there are different variables at stake, so you cross match them. So I do, because of this, I do find, and I do want to work, and I think I will promote, and I'm promoting that foresight is about practical things. what we can practically do. Of course, there are many research on that, many ideologies on that, many different futuristic scenarios on that. But there are two different streams, let's say. People that do this kind of stories of what our future looks like, and they already predetermine it, whether it will be positive or negative. So it has the etiquette, right? It has the, on the forehead it's written, yes, I want to have this future that will be positive. We all want that. Or somebody that is very pessimistic, I want this future to be I think that the future will be very negative, and just prepare ourselves for that, like a doomsday thing, But for me, it's how we want to perceive that in terms of our everyday life and everyday impact. Because, liberal or non-liberal, or participatory and non-participatory democracy, representative or not representative democracy, at the end of the day is what people feel for their benefit, right? Whether they feel that we'll have enough resources to live, whether they will have a good quality of life, social and healthcare, etc. This is how I perceive this is my standpoint. This is my focal point. So yes, again, we need to take into account that there is a techno elite in the world, that there is a dominance of the techno elite in the world, that this might disrupt many different ecosystems and political systems in the world, and how we want to deal with that. So it's in line. Thank you, Sanya. Also, your question with this matrix that we have. Again, optimist and pessimist, but whether if we are optimist and if we feel that we cannot have a difference, that then we are following people that they are optimists, and they predetermine our future. I mean, of course, there are leaders in the world, there are politicians, these are the ones that lead, these are the ones that we have elected them, etc. But the society is the one that is leading the society at the end of the day, theoretically speaking, but also practically speaking in some aspects. So my idea, every time I talk about foresight and future thinking, is that yes, we have to see the future from a point of view of what kind of future we want to have, not what kind of future we think we will have. But to work
that's definitely, yeah, that's absolutely what I understood, and I appreciate that very much. But before having the model, there are some preconditions, like we know in the region, because this nice word that we use all over the place is, and for whatever reason we have on transition, like you work on not only on people, but you do have institutions in Macedonia or in Serbia or in Croatia. And then within these institutions, you have those who are trained to do things in a certain way. And then there are those who are very hardly entering the change, etc., etc. So these slow motion aspects of the whatever future brings, it belongs to institutional building, and politically, in political terms, or in the language that is very specific to certain levels of institutional buildings. You are working within the UN, UNESCO, and the language used there, and how detached that corpus is from, when you say the people. Who is the people? Well, I don't know, high school students or students in general that are in apathy, and then you need to break this silence, and you need to get into them, and then you're not going to patronize them. You need to activate them in a way that they become engaged citizens, etc. So those are all models that are very much in line with what is behind the machine on talking about foresights and prognosing, projecting what would be the future.
I mean, everything that you said,
You
yeah.
have protests. No,
Yeah.
but I'm thinking here direct on protests in Serbia,
Mhm.
because you had the beginning of the protest. You had students working in plenums and organizing themselves, and then what happened is that instead of getting the support that is progressive, this support from outside or from in elites within the Serbia that are calculating on their own terms about the foresighting and they somehow lost the very strength of what they wanted to do when they started. So this is not only so I again foresight as methodology is especially when it's applicable is very good, but what I want to hear from you is the program of the how you move from this methodology into action, like not touching the content, because each content is specific, but again, not only staying into whatever we have, recommendations or policy papers, etc., etc. So how you make a shift from within. It's not a question, actually. It's just a comment, and you made me thinking about it. So thank
Yeah.
you for that.
I
Yeah.
mean, one remark is that it's not surprising that our region is not pro foresight. It's not
Yeah.
surprising. And there is the question of psychology, mentality, cultural. So there are certain barriers to using foresight. The first barrier is short-term political cycle. The
Sure.
second barrier is preference to certainty. No one wants change. Everybody wants certainty and risk aversion. These are the preconditions, that barriers to foresight, this mindset. And what I understood also with working with public servants, because these are the same mentalities, Serbia, Bosnia, Montenegro, Macedonia, Albania, these are the same mentalities that we work with, is that they prefer certainty, and they prefer really short-term cycles and short-term measures. They don't think about long-term. And while I didn't give up on them, I'm not giving up definitely on young people. And this is why I focused my part to have this academic community and academic cycles in order to embed. I'm not brainwashing them, don't get me wrong, but just to push this message that we can do something. If we really have this phase, yes, I want to make a change, but then I'm pessimist and I won't make the change because my society is like this and this and this. Everything is politicized, everything doesn't work, there is always corruption, so I'm going with the flow. Yes, there are a lot of students saying to me like this, but at the end, I want to show them some sort of creative and funny and engaging way that this should not be the case, that we have alternatives. And when somebody is asking me whether the foresight really influence decisions, yes, but you cannot see them directly. It is an indirect influence at the end of the day. And it depends on how much you do it and how involved you are. And one person, I don't remember now who, but there are a lot of persons saying the same thing, that doing this future thinking exercises, it's not about doing it alone. You need to do it in a group. You need to spread the message so the people will be more aware. I mean, what benefit do I have if I do it alone? Nothing. I don't want it to do it alone. I want to do with other people, and I wanted to spread this feeling, energized feeling, that we can do something. We can do something about the future.
Marina, if I can just add to that, so one of the basic concepts of foresight is to be as participatory as possible.
Yeah.
So you gather as much of the whole society that you can when doing them. And the second part about it is to have as a broad of a horizon scanning as possible. It sometimes with this is the lack of resources and time that we were talking about. So if you have a long term horizon scanning, if you have a team that works on the horizon, they will see even the little, as we call
Yes.
them, noises. They are not even trends or megatrends or signals. They are little noises, and you can catch those noises. There were this is something that we've learned from demos. There were companies that were attuned that maybe some kind of pandemic will happen. They heard the noise and they put it in the risk register, and then
Yes.
they know that if this happens, we can put our people work from home, etc., etc.
Yes.
So there are foolproofing ways. Only again, resources and commitment. Just those two things. And
So yeah, Tanya, what I will try to do now in May is to have a workshop with young diplomats in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So I'm doing a diplomatic foresight workshop for them, and let's see how future diplomats will react to this. I'm trying in different fields to do it. I will establish a foresight cycles, foresight club, student club at my university, so students can join and do this exercise. Try to engage or themselves, test their mindset, but also test the environment. So you have to start from somewhere in a way, and
There is another thing, because you also said you worked with either those who are enrolled in psychology studies or
yeah,
anything related to that. The one aspect of it is extremely important, working on our own biases, and especially cognitive biases.
yes,
On epistemological level, what is it, and related to foresight? Because if there is something that is um,
true,
somehow not allowing us to go through or to have that openness, is the level of cognitive biases that we have, because that's the starting point also to work on fear. And we all
yes,
know that if people are focused on how to deal with their own anxieties at the personal level or the level of the smaller community, they have tendency just to become hostile to everything that
yes,
is coming from outside, which
the
is
best,
also hostility towards the openness of the future, because the
yeah,
openness of the future, it's being ready for the future, not only resilient, but ready in terms of, yeah, I can go through this. This will not kill me, or it will not destroy my capacity to either to defend or to resist to whatever is coming. And politically, in political language, it's extremely important. Yeah.
yes. Thank
Thank
you,
you
Tanya.
very
I,
much.
I like your
It
thoughts.
was.
Thank you.
I think, Vanya, we can wrap it
yes,
up.
yeah.
Marina, thank you extremely for what you
Welcome. It was
provided
my
us as
pleasure.
information. And yeah, and we stay in touch, and say hello to Zoran. He's coming very often, and we are in
Yes,
touch
please.
often. Yeah, yeah. Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much,
Have a
and
nice day and weekend.
have a nice day. Bye
Bye.
bye.
Bye.